A new WLW love story. Her heart found home on the farm. The letter arrived on the worst day of Emma's life, though she wouldn't realize, until much later, that it was actually the beginning of everything. She found it wedged in her apartment, mailbox between a final eviction, notice and a credit card bill she had no way to pay, her hands shaking as she recognized her grandmother's handwriting on the envelope, even though Gran had been gone for 3 months. Emma sat down right there in the dingy hallway of her building, ignoring the flickering fluorescent light above her and the smell of garbage from the overflowing chute, and opened the letter with trembling fingers to find her grandmother's last gift, the deed to Willowbrook Farm, and a handwritten note that simply said, "You always belonged here, sweetheart. Come home." Emma pressed the paper to her chest and cried for the first time since the funeral. Cried for her grandmother, who had been the only person who truly saw her. Cried for the girlfriend who had walked out 2 weeks ago saying Emma would never amount to anything. Cried for the job she had just been fired from for refusing her boss's advances. Cried for the 32 years of her life that felt like one long series of wrong turns and dead ends. She had nowhere else to go, no one else to turn to, and a farm she hadn't visited since she was 17. And stupid enough to believe the city held all the answers. The drive upstate took 6 hours in her dying car, every mile taking Emma further from the life she had tried to build and closer to memories she had spent 15 years trying to outrun. She had left Willowbrook the summer after high school, desperate to escape the small-town judgment after her relationship with Rebecca. Chen became public knowledge, fleeing to the city where she thought she could finally be herself without shame. But the city had been crueler in different ways, teaching her that anonymity was not the same as acceptance, that you could be surrounded by millions of people and still be utterly alone. Her relationship history read like a catalog of bad decisions and worse timing. Women who wanted to change her, women who used her, women who left when things got difficult, culminating in Amanda, who had seemed different at first, but turned out to be the same. Story with a prettier cover. Amanda had mocked Emma's dreams of writing, called her naive for believing in love, told her she was wasting her potential on fantasies when she should focus on being realistic, and then left Emma for someone with better financial prospects. The words had burrowed deep, making Emma question everything about herself, making her wonder if maybe she really was the problem, if maybe she really was too broken to deserve happiness. Willowbrook appeared through the late afternoon mist like something from a half-forgotten dream. The farmhouse needed work. Emma could see that immediately, with its peeling paint and sagging porch, but the bones were still good. Still standing, proud on the hill overlooking acres of overgrown fields and the old barn that leaned slightly to the left as it always had. Emma sat in her car for a long moment, gathering courage before stepping out into air that smelled of earth and growing things and possibilities she had stopped believing in. That's when she saw her, a figure emerging from the barn with a pitchfork over her shoulder, moving with the kind of easy grace that comes from years of physical labor. The woman stopped when she saw Emma, and even from a distance Emma could feel the weight of her gaze, assessing and measuring in a way that made Emma suddenly conscious of her city, clothes and impractical shoes and general uselessness in this environment. The woman walked toward her, and as she got closer, Emma could make out features that made her breath catch unexpectedly. Sharp cheekbones and dark eyes and black hair pulled back in a braid, skin the warm brown of summer earth, wearing work clothes that were dirty and practical and somehow made her look more put together than Emma had felt in years. The woman introduced herself as Kay Winters, the neighboring farmer who had been keeping an eye on Willowbrook since Gran passed, making sure the property didn't fall into complete disrepair while the estate was being settled. Kay's voice was low and measured, with a slight accent Emma couldn't quite place, and she spoke in complete sentences without unnecessary small talk, which Emma found both refreshing and intimidating. Kay explained that she had been maintaining the most essential systems, keeping the well functioning and the roof patched and the barn secure, not because she had been paid, but because it was what neighbors did and because she had loved Gran like family. Emma felt a surge of gratitude mixed with inadequacy, realizing that this stranger had done more for her grandmother's legacy in 3 months than Emma had done in 15 years of absence. Kay studied Emma with those dark, penetrating eyes and asked directly if Emma planned to stay or sell, and Emma heard herself saying she was staying even though she had no idea if that was true, even though she knew nothing about running a farm, even though every rational part of her brain was screaming that this was just another mistake in a long line of mistakes. The first few weeks were a brutal education in everything Emma didn't know. She woke each morning to a to-do list that seemed impossible, staring at equipment she didn't know how to use and systems she didn't understand and land that had its own demands and rhythms she had never learned. Kay showed up most mornings without being asked, teaching Emma the basics with a patience that somehow made Emma feel even more incompetent, demonstrating how to fix the tractor and clear the irrigation ditches and identify which parts of the property needed immediate attention versus what could wait. Kay rarely smiled, rarely offered encouragement, just stated facts and expected Emma to keep up. And Emma found herself working harder than she ever had in her life just to avoid disappointing this stern woman who had no reason to care whether Emma succeeded or failed. Emma's body ached constantly from the unfamiliar physical labor, her hands blistered and bleeding, her muscles screaming protest every morning when she dragged herself out of bed. She would catch glimpses of herself in mirrors and not recognize the woman staring back, someone sunburned and exhausted and covered in dirt, someone who looked nothing like the version of herself she had spent years trying to perfect in the city, but something unexpected was happening beneath the struggle. Emma found herself noticing things she had been too young to appreciate during her childhood visits. The way morning light transformed the dew on spiderwebs into strings of diamonds, the satisfaction of fixing something with her own hands, the profound quiet of evening, when the only sounds were wind through grass and the distant call of owls beginning their hunt. She started sleeping better despite the physical exhaustion, her mind quieter without the constant noise of traffic and sirens, and the thousand anxieties that had plagued her in the city. She began to remember who she had been before the world taught her to be ashamed, before she learned to make herself smaller, to fit into spaces that were never meant to hold her, before she started believing that her queerness was something to apologize for rather than celebrate. And through all of it, she became increasingly aware of Kay in ways that both confused and frightened her, noticing the strength in Kay's hands when she demonstrated a technique, the concentration on her face when she examined a problem, the rare moments when she would say something unexpectedly funny in that deadpan way of hers, and Emma would find herself laughing for the first time in months. Kay remained largely enigmatic, revealing herself in small pieces like a puzzle Emma was slowly assembling. Emma learned that Kay had inherited her family's farm at 23, when her parents died in a car accident, that she had been running it alone for nearly a decade, that she had a degree in sustainable agriculture and could have worked anywhere but chose to stay here, where her roots ran deep. Kay mentioned, casually, that she was Two-Spirit, using the traditional term from her Ojibwe heritage, and Emma felt something shift in her chest at this revelation. At the realization that Kay existed outside the binary in ways Emma had never had language for in her own small-town upbringing. Kay talked about the farm with a reverence that made Emma understand this was not just work but a calling, a relationship with land and seasons and growth that bordered on spiritual. She explained that her people had been here long before property deeds and ownership, that the land didn't belong to anyone, but that people could belong to the land if they listened well enough. And Emma found herself hanging on every word, feeling like she was being taught something essential she had never known. She needed to learn. The turning point came during haying season, when Emma and Kay worked side by side for 18-hour days trying to get the hay cut and baled, before rain ruined everything. Emma pushed herself beyond any limit she thought she had, learning to drive the tractor in straight lines, learning to stack bales in patterns that would shed water, learning that she was capable of far more than she had ever given herself credit for. On the last day, as the final bale was loaded and the first drops of rain began to fall, Emma looked at Kay across the loaded trailer and saw something new in her expression, something that looked almost like respect, maybe even approval. Kay smiled then, really smiled for the first time, and it transformed her entire face, making her look younger and more open and so beautiful that Emma felt her heart do something complicated in her chest. They drove back to the barn in companionable silence as rain began falling in earnest, and when they pulled up and the rain was coming down in sheets, Kay looked at Emma and said quietly that she had done good work, that Gran would be proud, that Emma was tougher than she looked. Emma felt tears prick her eyes at this simple praise, realizing how starved she had been for someone to see her efforts and acknowledge them without qualification or condition. They ran through the rain to Kay's truck, laughing breathlessly, and Kay drove Emma back to the farmhouse. But when they arrived, neither of them moved to get out. They sat in the cab listening to rain drum on the roof, and Kay started talking in a way she never had before, telling Emma about the woman she had loved, who left because she couldn't handle the isolation of farm life, couldn't understand why Kay would choose this hard existence over easier options, couldn't accept that Kay's identity was not something performative for city consumption, but deeply rooted in tradition and land and ways of being that predated contemporary labels. Emma recognized the pain in Kay's voice because she carried the same pain, the same experience of being left by people who claimed to love them but really only loved the idea of them, who wanted them to be different, easier, more convenient. Emma found herself reaching across the space between them and taking Kay's hand, their fingers interlacing naturally, and Kay looked at their joined hands and then up at Emma with an expression of such vulnerable hope that Emma felt her breath catch. Kay asked in a whisper if Emma was planning to stay, or if this was just temporary, if she was really committed to this life, or if she would leave when things got hard or boring, or when the novelty wore off. Because Kay couldn't handle investing in something that was going to disappear, couldn't handle opening her heart to someone who would eventually decide that she and this life weren't enough. Emma understood the question beneath the question, understood that Kay was asking if Emma could love her, could love this life, could stay even when it was difficult. Emma thought about Amanda and all the others who had made her feel like she needed to be someone different, thought about the years she had spent trying to fit into a life that never quite fit, thought about the peace she had started to find here in this place she had once been so desperate to escape. Emma squeezed Kay's hand and told her the truth, that she didn't know if she would be good at farming, didn't know if she could make Willowbrook profitable, didn't know if she had what it took to build a life here, but that she knew with absolute certainty that she wanted to try, that for the first time in her adult life she felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be, that she was falling for Kay in ways that terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. Kay's eyes widened at this confession, and then she was leaning across the console and kissing Emma with a gentleness that made Emma's heart ache, a kiss that tasted like rain and promise and beginnings that felt more real than anything Emma had experienced before. When they broke apart, Kay rested her forehead against Emma's and said that she had been falling too, that she had been fighting it because she was scared, but that she was tired of being scared, tired of protecting herself from possibility, tired of being alone when the woman she was falling in love with was right here. The months that followed were a revelation in what love could be when it was built on mutual respect and shared work, and the kind of intimacy that comes from seeing someone at their worst and choosing them anyway. Emma and Kay became partners in every sense, working their farms in collaboration, sharing equipment and knowledge and labor, building something together that neither could have built alone. Kay taught Emma about indigenous farming practices, about companion planting and working with nature rather than against it, about understanding land as a living system rather than a resource to exploit. Emma brought her own gifts to the partnership, using her organizational skills to streamline operations, her writing ability to market their products and tell their story, her fresh perspective to see opportunities Kay had stopped noticing. They established a farm cooperative that brought together other small farmers in the region, creating community and shared resources that helped everyone thrive. They converted portions of both properties to native plantings that supported pollinators and wildlife, honoring Kay's commitment to stewardship that served more than just human needs. Their relationship deepened through seasons and cycles, through hard work and small pleasures and the daily choice to show up for each other. Emma learned Kay's rhythms and moods, learned when she needed space and when she needed company, learned that her occasional silences were not rejection, but the way she processed the world, learned to read emotion in the set of her shoulders and the line of her mouth rather than waiting for words. Kay learned that Emma's cheerfulness sometimes masked anxiety, learned to recognize when she was pushing herself too hard to prove something, learned that Emma needed regular affirmation, not because she was needy, but because she had been starved of it for so long. They had their first real fight during planting season, exhausted and stressed and snapping at each other over something trivial, and Emma felt panic rise thinking this was how it ended. This was when Kay would realize Emma was too much work. But Kay didn't leave, didn't shut down, didn't turn cold. Instead, she suggested they take a break and cool off. And that evening, she showed up at Emma's door with takeout and an apology and a willingness to talk through what had gone wrong, teaching Emma that healthy relationships meant working through conflict, rather than avoiding it or letting it destroy everything. Emma started writing again, something she had abandoned years ago when Amanda convinced her it was a waste of time. She wrote about farming and queerness and finding home in unexpected places, and Kay would read her drafts and offer thoughts, with the same care she brought to everything, seeing the value in Emma's words in a way no one else ever had. Emma's first published essay, about returning to rural roots as a queer woman and finding acceptance she never had before, went viral in a small way, resonating with others who felt caught between worlds, between identities, between the places they came from and the places they tried to build. She started a blog that became a book deal, telling stories about farming and identity and love that challenged stereotypes, about rural life and queer existence, showing that these things were not incompatible but could nourish each other in beautiful ways. Kay supported her through all of it, proud of Emma's success in a way that held no jealousy or resentment, understanding that Emma's writing complemented rather than competed with their shared life. If this story has touched your heart, if you've ever felt lost and then found yourself in the last place you expected, if you believe in love that sees us fully and chooses us anyway, please take a moment to like this video and share it with someone who needs hope today. Your engagement helps stories, like Emma and Kay's, reach others who are standing exactly where Emma stood, wondering if they'll ever find where they belong. Subscribe if you believe in second chances and love that heals, because these stories matter, and your support makes them possible. 2 years after Emma arrived at Willowbrook, she and Kay stood together at the property line that separated their farms. The boundary that had once defined them as separate, now just an arbitrary line on land. They worked together as partners in every way that mattered. They were planning to officially merge the properties, to make legal what had long been true in practice, creating something larger and more sustainable than either farm could be alone. Kay had asked Emma to marry her the night before, not with a grand gesture but in the quiet of evening, sitting on Emma's porch watching fireflies rise from the grass, simply saying that she wanted to spend her life with Emma if Emma wanted the same, presenting a ring she had made herself, from silver and a stone, she had found on their shared land. Emma had said yes through happy tears, understanding that she was being offered not just marriage but true partnership, not just love but home, not just acceptance but celebration of exactly who she was. Share your own story of finding home in an unexpected place in the comments below. Your journey might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. A reminder that the path to where we belong is rarely straight, but always worth traveling. Emma thought often about the letter that had brought her here, about her grandmother who had somehow known that Willowbrook was not the place Emma was running from but the place she needed to run to, that sometimes the only way forward is to return to our roots and let them nourish new growth. She understood now that she had not failed in the city but simply been planted in the wrong soil, trying to grow in conditions that could never support who she truly was, and that there was no shame in acknowledging when something is not working and choosing differently. Standing beside Kay, their fingers intertwined, watching the sun set over land that held them both, Emma felt a completeness she had never experienced before, a sense of rightness that settled into her bones like coming home after a long exile. This was not the life she had planned, not the story she thought she was writing, but it was infinitely better than anything she had imagined, built on honest work and authentic love in the core.